Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because, as the philosopher Plato once said, there is no harm in repeating a good thing. I'm the blogger in question and the moderator of this podcast. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. Have you discovered that we've been producing more podcast episodes beyond our initial pilot 3? In fact, CPU, happily keeps growing, and we have several new episodes coming down the pike. As always, though, because the panelists and I have to get up from our couches sometime and have lives behind the podcast, the episodes will still likely come at irregular intervals, so subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes to stay on top of brand new episodes. We have several episodes already published discussing Downton Abbey, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Doctor Who, Orange is the New Black, and Once Upon a Time, and more episodes are in the works covering other shows such as Game of Thrones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The X-Files, and hopefully many, many more. If you don't hear your show in this podcast format, though, check out the blog. I still write reviews, and I'm always seeking new podcast panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, and an email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com. Of course, you can always subscribe to the blog and sign the guest book or comment on posts you see. We love feedback since we obviously love giving it ourselves. Today we are around the water cooler as well as taking a first look at what is now, sadly, a canceled series, namely Forever, which aired on ABC during the 2014 to 2015 television season. Forever is a fantasy crime drama series that centers on the character of Dr. Henry Morgan, played by Ian Grufford, who is an immortal New York City medical examiner. He uses his extensive knowledge and Sherlock-like powers of deduction to assist the New York City Police Department in solving crimes and to discover a way to end his immortality. Flashbacks within each episode reveal various details of Henry's life and mete out some of the mysterious circumstances behind his immortality, as well as describe the many lifetimes he's lived. Since his first death by point-blank shooting while trying to free slaves as a doctor aboard a ship involved in the African slave trade in the 18th century, Henry disappears each time he dies and returns to life, naked, in a nearby body of water, most often the Hudson River while in NYC, without aging a day. Henry's long life has afforded him encyclopedic knowledge and remarkable observation skills, which impress most people he encounters, including Detective Joan Martinez, played by Elena de la Garza, only antiquarian Abe, played by Judd Hirsch, whom Henry and his now-deceased wife Abigail found as a newborn in a German concentration camp during World War II, and who Henry regards as a son, despite the fact that Abe has passed his surrogate father in age, knows that he is immortal. Henry is stalked throughout the series by Adam, who is also an immortal and claims to have been alive for 2 millennia. Reception of the series was mixed. Television critics gave Forever mixed reviews, divided over the series' similarity to other crime dramas and unsold by the series' premise. By contrast, voters in several online polls ranked the series as one of the best of the television season. Although ABC gave the series a full season episode order on November 7, 2014, the network canceled Forever after one season in May 2015. ABC cited the show's live ratings as the rationale behind the decision. Television pundits, however, have theorized that other factors motivated the network's decision as the show gained viewers who watched the show up to 7 days later on their DVRs. Fans of the series reacted strongly, creating a social media campaign to save the series, but as of late 2015, the series remains canceled. Today, our eager group of panelists will be rating Forever's one and only season. They will be discussing what was good, what was not as good, and what they wanted to see from Forever, as well as how they felt about the show's unexpected cancellation. It should be noted that all of the panelists have viewed all available episodes of Forever and may discuss sensitive plot points or other things best enjoyed by a first watch. So, for those who haven't watched Forever at all, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
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 So, two of our panelists have done this before. I'll probably start with them first. And then we have a brand new panelist who is very eager to talk about Forever. So what I'd like you to do is tell me your first name, how you came to watch Forever, what made you start watching, how did you find out about it, what kept you watching, and then how would you rate your interest in the show? If you listen to this podcast, you know this is a pretty standard question for our little Couch Potatoes Unite discussions. So how would you rate your interest in Forever? You wanted it to live forever and ever, like Henry. You wanted to stay invested in it for as long as possible, even though you recognize that all things end eventually, like Abe. You thought some of it was a little weird, but you were devoted to trying to solve the mystery, like Joe. You had an unhealthy fascination with the forensic examinations of the dead bodies, and with Henry's uncanny Sherlockian gift of deduction, like Lucas. You thought it was all a bit weird and off-putting, like Donnie. You really wanted it all to just get to the point, even though you accepted the odd nature of the story and the eccentric but successful elements involved, like Joanna. You were blindly devoted to it, aware but willfully oblivious of what the future might hold, like Abigail. Or for you, it was just another show in this as in all other lifetimes. So you tuned in and out playfully, as a cat would with a mouse, like Adam. I hope you're all intrigued by these choices. I had fun writing them.
I can tell.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm back again. Surprise, surprise. I first heard about Forever through the promotional TV spots that were put up by ABC at the end of the summer of 2014, beginning of fall, right before their new season launched, and I was immediately intrigued. I'm not a huge crime drama fan, which is very surprising since I love murder mysteries and other forms, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It had a unique premise, and I like castles, so hey, what the heck, I'll check it out. And I fell in love instantly and always watched it, always tuned in, had to watch it right away. My interest in the show, I'm a combination of three.
Whoa.
Three. This is new for me. I wanted it to live forever and ever like Henry because I just thought it was unique and I loved it, and it was kind of a guilty pleasure a little bit for me. I'm also a little bit of an Abe. I wanted to stay invested for it as long as possible, but having heard throughout the season that it may be on the chopping block, I knew that it was probably going to come to an end. But I also had a very unhealthy fascination with the forensic examinations of the dead bodies and with Henry's uncanny Sherlockian gift of deduction like Lucas, because I love all things Sherlock Holmes. So, combo of the three.
I'm very, very excited that someone picked the Lucas option. I just want to say that.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that because this is Sherryl, by the way, and I am the virgin to the group. But I love the show, and I actually was going to say that can we combine a couple of choices here because I actually had the
There are no rules, Cheryl. There are no rules.
As I said, I'm a virgin, so I'm learning all this. But, I had the same three choices that she did.
Nice.
So
Nice.
we're on the same page here.
All right. How'd you come to watch Forever?
You know, as many television options that are available out there, and as many, cable and Netflix and anything you can think of, but all the methods of watching shows out there, I'm an old school girl. I tend to watch a lot of the three major networks or four, and typically a lot of ABC. I'm a Castle lover. I watch Dancing with the Monday nights, Dancing with the Stars and Castle, and so then I'd see the commercials that led up to it. But I was fascinated by the premise of, in his living forever, and I thought, usually things like that are only vampires, and I thought that was a unique twist to someone who wasn't a vampire. And I thought it was interesting as you watch the episodes to see the different periods that he's gone through, and so that made it more than just, when you watch a show, it's these characters in this time frame, and I just thought that was more interesting because he lived through so many different time periods, so we weren't stuck in any one
We got to
thing.
bounce back and forth with the
with him,
flashbacks.
and so I just thought it was great.
Just kept watching till the end?
Just kept watching. Good.
All right.
I got a kick out of Lucas.
He was my favorite character.
And who doesn't? Bones fans will recognize him as one of the Squinterns that she had for a while. Amie.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
My name's Amie, and I actually stumbled upon it because I don't actually have cable, so I don't have ABC or anything, but just flipping through, it sounded interesting, it looked interesting, and I started to watch it through the magic of Netflix, and I loved it. I think I'm more in the Henry category, where I was just, didn't want it to end. I just want to keep going. I love everything about it, and I love the characters. I can see why people might have an issue with it, but I happen to like the genre, and I happen to like the premise, so...
So, as you all know, my name is Kylie, and the reason that I watch Forever, for those of you who know my TV watching habits and or follow the blog, I tend to shop for pilots at the start of the fall season. I take a look at what's coming out over the course of the next year. And just like Sherryl, I was very intrigued by this premise. I knew Ian Grufford from Ringer, the CW show that also starred Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I watched that show's only season. It also got canceled early, and I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed him as an actor in that show. I also enjoyed Judd Hirsch. He's been on TV for a long time. He's been in movies for a long time. He was in Taxi. He was in a whole bunch of them. I knew that that would be a very good quality pairing, and so I kept it on the list. Like Kristen, I also heard the scuttle because I keep track of these things as a blogger and a podcast moderator about the prognosis for this show, but I also saw that the ratings were on the increase over the course of the season and was very surprised to learn that ABC decided to cancel it, which we will talk about in a moment. I will say that I did not watch the show while it was airing real time. I actually caught the season because I actually do have a life behind the podcast. I tend to watch my TV not when it comes on, and I caught up on Hulu and watched the whole season fairly quickly and loved it. As such, if I were to rate my interest in the show, realistically, I probably would be an Abe. I wanted to stay invested in it for as long as possible because I already knew it was canceled. But I just kept on plugging and hoped that there was a good resolution at the end of the first season. And if there wasn't, I was going to get really mad and start being one of the people who is #SavingForever. We'll talk about that in a second, too. So that's where I'm coming from. That's where the other panelists are coming from. So let's now move to the next thing. Because this is also a first look show, which means we've never talked about it on the blog or the podcast before. Pretty common sense, considering it was only one season. It was new last year. We have the pilot premiere and first look rating scale. And you've probably heard this before if you listen to the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt podcast. What I'd like the panelists each to do is to rate this show. How would you rate it? Is it 5 stars, as in you had to watch everything, holy smokes, cancellation, no! That's really how I wrote it. Is it 4 stars? Is it intriguing and you watched, but you saw pitfalls in the premise, yet you didn't think it deserved cancellation? Is it 3 stars? There were things you liked and things you didn't. Cancellation was sad, but not necessarily a surprise. Is it 2 stars? You only watched part of it. You were mainly bored. There was some intrigue or fascination that held it together, but you couldn't convince yourself to keep watching, so you weren't really bothered by the fact that it was canceled. Or is this a 1 star? As in, pass on this one. It's a snoozer, not funny, not interesting, not your cup of tea. There's just so many options to waste time on this one. Who cares about cancellation? Good. I don't think anybody here is a 1 star. I hope not. So how would you rate Forever? Who wants to answer that question?
Well, I did have to watch everything, so I guess that would make it a 5. I tried to watch it every week, although like you, I do have a life sometimes, so there were times when I had to DVR it and watch it later, and unfortunately, I'm sometimes so busy that I wasn't catching that it was possibly on the chopping block, and so it was kind of like, wait, why isn't it coming back on? and I was upset because I really thought that was one of the best shows on television. I thought it was an interesting premise. It was, you got your forensics, you got your mysteries to solve, and like I said, you got the periods, the different periods, which made it interesting as well. I think Judd Hirsch maybe will live forever because he hasn't aged since Taxi.
Right?
And I remember him on a show called Dear John. So yeah, no, I just loved the show and thought it was one of the best on there. And obviously, I wasn't the only one because it got the Imagine Award for Best Primetime New Drama and the People's Choice Award for Favorite New Drama and the TV Guide Award for Favorite New Show. So I wasn't the only one.
Well, those are good points. We'll definitely be talking about that in a second. But what about one of the other ones? Kristen, how did you rate the show?
I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Okay.
I definitely felt like I had to watch everything, and I was devastated that it was canceled. However, I did see that there were some pitfalls, some things I was kind of like, really, why did they go in this direction? Why did they make that choice versus something that I felt could have been stronger? But I'm not one of the writers, so I'm sure they had a plan. But yeah, so 4.5.
Okay.
For me. Good.
4.5.
Almost perfect.
All right. Truth be told, I had circled 4 and 5. But since I did watch every episode and had to watch every episode, that's why I went with 5.
Are you standing by 5?
I'm standing by 5.
Okay. Amie, how would you rate the show?
I'm gonna have to go with a 4.5 on it as well. I'm disappointed that it's canceled, but I did see that there were some pitfalls. But it was so intriguing, and I wanted to see where it went. So 4.5 for me as well.
I would have to echo the last two. I would also stick to 4.5, which for me means I will watch every episode, but same reaction. I don't think there were as many pitfalls as a normal 4-star for me, but there were definitely some things that didn't play as well. And I do want to comment as one of the topics that we are about to discuss that maybe one of its problems, unfortunately, is that because of the nature of its show, it was really hard to gain new viewers, at least in terms of live viewing. Not talking about DVR, not talking about online streaming, that kind of thing. So, but that's very minor in my estimation of things. I think it was an excellent show and certainly very addictive, and I really wanted to know what happened, and so 4.5 stars it is for me as well. It's hard for me to give a 5-star though. I'm kind of hard on shows. So, all right. So now let's talk about the big things. Let's talk about the different details and what you liked and what you didn't like. Expound on some of your reactions. Kristen, what were the pitfalls?
For me, I think one of the biggest pitfalls was how quickly everything wrapped up at the end after it being dragged out so much at the beginning, especially the Adam mystery and a lot of the consistent, I guess, hamster wheel of Joe almost finding out but not really finding out because they were able to misdirect her, and I felt that kind of cat and mouse game with Joe and her realization was a little overdone. The Cuba Gooding Jr. guest star arc, I felt was done for sweeps and only for sweeps. While I do think he's a phenomenal actor and I liked the result of his arc, which was, spoilers, was discovering the weapon that killed Henry the first time. I thought that was a good way to lead into that, finding the weapon to potentially end your immortality that Adam was talking about. But I felt the big guest star arc was a little unnecessary. They easily could have gotten that point across with somebody who was more up and coming or someone unknown. That he was just really cast for the big name to try to get more viewers. And I agree with Kylie. I felt if you weren't watching it in succession from the beginning, you really couldn't pick up on it. When I would watch it on my DVR, if I wasn't paying 100% attention and I jumped ahead a little to another episode, I'd have to go back and rewatch to kind of pick up on the clues that I missed. So I would also consider that a pitfall.
I agree with you on that, especially with the Cuba Gooding. I like Cuba Gooding, but it was like, okay, the only reason for this is the sweeps. But they could have also brought him on, the actor on, and it would have done the same thing, but in a different role. The pairing of him and Joe just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it didn't feel real to me.
It just seemed like a distraction away from her and Henry. Could have also been done in different ways.
Yeah.
think another pitfall, if you will, or something I wasn't thrilled with was, I mean, I was happy to at least learn something of what happened to Abigail.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too abrupt and too, like, I was still hoping that there would be more, you know. But that could be something, you know, at that point they already knew that they were canceling.
Or they had a good indication.
So they were trying to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I think in defense of the series, because it had been talked about, little sprinklings of you're on the bubble, some show producers will talk to their networks and say, you know, where are we? Is there any possibility of renewal? And then they'll plan their story arc accordingly. I think this show's producers knew that they were going to be chopped regardless of what gains they made, and so that's exactly what happened. They rushed those last storylines. So yeah, I also wanted to say to Kristen's point that, and which was originally mine, that it's hard for people to kind of pick up on it. That's not to say that people shouldn't try, but we just all know that that's kind of how it works. You know, there's sort of word of mouth function that sometimes goes with TV shows. So for shows like Lost, our favorite comparison, Lost, which also was hard to pick up in the middle, that benefited from word of mouth. So people would go back, catch up, and then jump on board. Forever had kind of that same serial mechanism like Lost, but really wasn't given the chance for the word of mouth to spread, I think.
You know, I agree with what you guys said, and I can't really add to it because I think those were the major ones that I would agree with, between the guest star and the rushed feeling of wrapping up those storylines, or, you know, bringing some closure to them since they knew they wouldn't be revisiting that story. But I can't really add anything else. I totally agree with what's been said.
For the record, I also thought the Cuba Gooding arc was a little out of nowhere and kind of, totally contrived in a way. And also, as much as I love Cuba Gooding, I didn't feel he had any chemistry with Elena de la Garza. So I was like, what is going on with this relationship? I don't understand. Bring her back to Henry. Why is this? This is a little bit. This is a trope. It's a repeated thing that people do. So let's talk about the characters. Who are your favorite characters and favorite story arcs?
Abe was probably one of my favorite characters. Abe and Lucas.
Oh, mine too.
Yeah. Hands down. I thought they brought so much more to the story. Abe brought a lot of heart to the story, and Lucas brought so much optimism from being the assistant Amie, the medical examiner, you know, with his love of comic books and the Sherlock style, and how he really tried to emulate Henry. I thought that was really sweet, and I would have loved to see, you know, Henry's relationship with both Abe and Lucas, and then the trio growing together, because I'm sure Lucas would have been brought in on the secret after Joe, obviously. I would have liked to see their little trio or, you know, quartet grow a little bit more.
Well, and it was kind of heading in that direction when he was helping Abe with trying to find out what happened to Abigail.
Yeah, happened to his mom.
You know, I did anyway, got really drawn into to him. I mean, he's kind of fun and quirky and interesting anyway, you know. So.
And he was both of those characters were very, very well written, and they were well acted, very honestly acted.
I can't remember what the actor's name is, but the person, like I said, who played Lucas was a squintern on Bones.
Joel David Moore.
Joel David Moore, thank you very much. Joel David Moore, I can't remember what his character's name was on Bones, but I do remember that he was the uber emo squintern, like everything was negative and death was, you know, a fact of life to the extreme, and it was kind of funny because his character on Forever reminded me a little of the squintern in the sense that he was doing forensic examinations, he was looking at corpses, not necessarily the bones of corpses, but corpses themselves, but yet he was so perky. He was just so perky and opposite from the one he was playing on Bones, so.
Which is always fun to see an actor play something.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it was similar, different, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things that I really loved, just so loved about this show, part of what drew me in and kept me addicted, was the relationship between Henry and Abe. I loved how they made the older man the son and the younger man the father.
Only in science fiction.
Right. Only in science fiction, exactly. And it was just a very well played relationship. Again, two very strong actors. Two very well-written characters with well-written character situations. It was totally endearing, and I could have spent 20 minutes just watching them, regardless of what might have been happening, what crime they might have been solving, or what Henry might have been trying to figure out as far as his very long life. So
yeah, the chemistry between the main members of the cast and the larger supporting characters was phenomenal. It's one of the best I've seen.
It was a very good ensemble.
I really enjoyed watching like the episodes when the guy came to teach Abe as a boy the piano, how to play the piano, and also later when he didn't want to see him, Henry didn't want to see him go off to Vietnam. I mean, just again, that was more of the time changing and watching them grow, but you also got to connect with them and feel their relationship. And I don't know, I just thought both the actors and the characters connected, like you said.
One of my favorite conversations was about music, their different tastes in music, and how Henry was stubbornly adherent to classical music, whereas Abe was like, no, Dad, there's jazz, there's rock and roll, and his stoner music, because he was a Vietnam vet and everything else. That was pretty funny to me. What did we think of Adam, the villain of the piece?
I loved the actor who played him. I mean, I thought he did a great job with it, and I was looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the actor's name who played Adam, but I remember him from Torchwood, being the sci-fi girl that I am, and I thought it was a phenomenal casting choice. He has that very elusive talent of really playing that cat and mouse game to perfection and making you hate him as a character, but you also really wanted to know more of his story. I was very intrigued by Adam's backstory, that he was a Roman who was killed by a blade, like almost back in Julius Caesar's time, I think, as you had mentioned. So I wanted to see more of his backstory, of him, getting stabbed by that Roman blade that we then discovered, towards the end of the season. And I wanted to see how he really was there and following Henry and Abe throughout their lives, and Abigail, more so than just Abigail's demise. I don't know, he was hypnotic a little bit, and I just wanted to keep watching him, even though I hated it.
He drew you in, which is, I think it was a good point that you made, but characters are much more interesting when, even if they're evil, if you find something to like about him, even if it is just, I want to know more, And in his case, like you said, I think at one point he said that he also died his first death trying to save someone, just like Henry died trying to save the slaves. And so that left you wondering, okay, was he Julius Caesar, or was he someone who
was he trying to save
Julius Caesar? Or, that leaves us wondering.
Here's an interesting speculation. I mean, he did say 2,000 years was the person he was trying to save, perhaps Jesus Christ.
I think I even made that comment as I was watching it as well.
I mean, I think that's one of the greatest disappointments that I have from the cancellation, is that we're never going to know. And there's just a lot of speculation that we can make about who Adam really was. And what do you think he was really trying to accomplish with Henry, though? This was one of the questions that I had sitting watching it. Like, why? I mean, I get there was a sense of, oh, look, here's another immoral person, and I've been watching you and comparing your life to mine. But beyond that,
what was the point?
What was the point?
Why was he trying? And that was what I was going to say too. Is I wanted to see more to find out why, what made him. If he died supposedly trying to save someone. Obviously, there was a change in his character over time. And what was that change? What happened to him that made him? Why is he so angry? Why is he going after Henry so much? Why does he want people to know about Henry and Henry's problem?
I feel like Adam, over the 2,000 years he's been around, I feel like he's lost his humanity. Exactly. And I feel like Henry embodies him of when he first started. He wanted to do good. He wanted to save more people. But then I feel along the way Adam realized no matter what I do, people I love are still going to die. I still can't die, so I can't sacrifice myself for them. I can only do so much good in this world, and it's only going to continue to get worse. And there's going to be evil that's going to come at me. Even if I vanquish one enemy, I'm going to have 10 more to come and take its place. I don't know, I feel he's a little jealous of Henry, because Henry hasn't discovered that, and he's very much an optimist. He still found love after his first wife had him committed back in the day, and he found love with Abigail. And I think Adam's a little jealous, and I think he wants to kind of make Henry one of his brothers and maybe lose his humanity a little bit too.
I also had a crazy theory that if if the person that Adam was trying to save back in Roman times was Jesus, what if he was Judas?
I was thinking that too.
Whoa!
See, there's all kinds of places they could
Yeah,
go if
well,
they didn't discontinue the show.
Well, and the fact too that he's called Adam, I mean, that's in biblical terms, that's the name of the first man that was created, and how appropriate for Judas, if it is so, to take the name of Adam.
I agree with so far what I've heard. I think Adam was a little creepy for me. I didn't enjoy him at first until finally they showed his face. And then he became more real to me and less of a monster, because before he was a bit scary, a bit ominous. But I wanted to know more about what his intentions were and where his story was going at first as well. So,
what did we think about the police section of the show? Of course, Joanna is the actress who played V on Orange is the New Black.
Which is probably why I couldn't take her seriously as the captain in this particular precinct.
I think she's too pretty. I wanted her haircut.
I felt she was kind of hands-off. She's like, okay, do what you need to do. We'll just, turn a blind eye a little bit. I think once she finally accepted Henry and realized his skill set, I think she's just kind of like, all right, go off on your own. You guys got this. I'm not worried about you. I feel like she wasn't as necessary as police captains are in other shows like Castle. Their captains over the seasons have been very instrumental. And this one, she was just kind of a bit player. I felt she was underutilized.
As far as the police go, yeah.
Yeah.
What about the partner, Donnie? Joe's partner.
I liked him.
He was a good straight man.
Yeah.
He was kind of a good foil for Henry. I mean, it feels like, Henry and Joe were more so partners than Donnie and Joe.
True.
So.
Yeah, we didn't see too much of him, but there were a couple of instances, and I can't remember exactly what they were right now, but I remember thinking, well, of course, I'm an actor, so I look at it from a different perspective, but I was looking at it and go, man, that was really good. He looked really, he drew me in, and it was interesting, and it was fun, and he just seemed human,
Yeah.
So.
He had some good one-liners. He had a good personality. He wasn't quite the same level of comedic relief that Lucas was.
No.
But he had some good material too, though. And I thought his arc was nice and neat and compact, and just more acceptance of Henry, and all right, well, he's got it, so.
Yeah, I just thought that was an opportunity that if the series had continued, there was an opportunity for growth there.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
I thought that as far as Joanna and Donnie, I thought in comparison to other shows that they were a bit nice, and I think that that's what was different about this show versus other shows of the same kind of theme, is there was less snark and there was less aggressiveness than some of the other shows that people may be more accustomed to. They were a little more hands-off, they were more nurturing of each other, and they were a little more, lighthearted. It wasn't as heavy-handed than maybe some other shows of the same sort of genre, their same sort of feel.
Yeah, I agree with them. Looking back on it, it definitely had a little more lightheartedness than a lot of the other stuff.
Maybe that's what I was referring to when I said he just seemed a little more human and relatable,
Yeah, but I mean, it may have been just me, but they're working New York police office precinct in New York City, same as Castle. I was really hoping for a crossover episode, especially after all their Men at 10 little promos that they did with Castle and Henry having a little Men at 10 support group. I thought that would have been a really cute opportunity to do a slight, just a fun sweeps crossover episode like they used to do back in the day. But maybe that's just me.
See, that would have been a good idea, instead of Cuba Gooding having the crossover. Have her date, what's his name on Castle?
Nathan Fillion?
Yeah, Richard.
Well, no, yes, but after they were married, one of the other officers was...
Esposito.
Yeah, because
he would have been a good match for Joe. Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah.
We're shipping characters across shows.
But hey, in theory, it could be the same universe. We don't know. Could be.
Amie, do you watch Castle?
No, I do not.
I don't either. Which is kind of funny because I really love Nathan Fillion, but
Firefly?
Yes.
It's one of those ones I didn't pick up in time, and now it's like, well, I'll probably just wait till it's done and watch all of it. Let's talk about any story pieces that you particularly liked or didn't like. We talked about characters, and we talked about some of the things that you made reference to some of the things as far as pitfalls and that kind of thing. But let's talk about story things. What did you like and not like about the story that the show was trying to tell?
There wasn't anything I disliked. I was just intrigued as I actually liked seeing what would happen if Henry stayed with somebody long enough, and they finally got to that point to see, that the people around him are aging. Of course, there's Abe, but Abe was always there. But it was cool for me to see the flashbacks and see how Henry has pretty much stayed the same except for who he is as a person, personality-wise. But I would have been interested, of course, to see what would happen in subsequent seasons where people continue to get older around him and he just stays the same. So that, I was just most intrigued by that and that whole concept.
Yeah, I agree with Amie. I think that was one of the most intriguing things for me, too. And I could see if this were to continue for future seasons, they could have done a huge plot twist and had Abe die. And, that would have been horrible for the show, in my opinion. It would have to be the end, but it would have been very interesting to see how Abe's death would have affected Henry, because they've been together, 99% of Abe's life. I was very disappointed with the fact that, Henry found love again with Abigail. Their connection was great, and she, no matter what happens, I'm going to stay with you. This is my forever. And, she gets to a certain age and she's like, nope, can't do it anymore. It's too painful. And the fact that she just left and she didn't really have any closure with her boys, that was heartbreaking for me.
Yeah. And you think, I don't know, I'm a mother, so I just can't see, even if I left my husband, and even if it was for good reason, she thought she was helping him, or, to leave your child, even though she didn't give birth to him. He was her child. She was his mother. And again, I think that was just a little too abrupt for me. Mm-hmm. At the time, I didn't know they were canceling the show, but I had hopes of her coming back later, or, if the show had been allowed to continue, it would have been interesting if Henry and Joe had actually gotten closer together, and then she came back, to add that twist to it. But.
Yeah, I was very disappointed that they ended Abigail's story the way that they did. But yes, I would have liked to see his romantic relationship with Joe take off, or at least once Joe was in on the secret, which it alluded to in the last moments of the series finale now, that she was going to be brought in so she could fully understand, and their working relationship and personal relationship could grow and develop because of that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff they could play with. People having children and the children growing up and then realizing, hey, Henry still looks the same. What's going on here? But yeah.
I know you mentioned it was abrupt, but did you buy Abigail's end of series arc?
Yes and no. No, because, again, it did feel too abrupt. I felt like it was such a dramatic character shift for her. There wasn't a lot of seeds planted in their relationship through the flashbacks until we got much closer to the end, where that big reveal finally came around. I don't know. I felt like there was so many different things they could have done there, and I just don't think this was the strongest choice. But I liked how they tried to redeem Abigail and her decision by her sacrificing herself to save Henry. I mean, she essentially slit her own throat so she wouldn't reveal anything to Adam, knowing that Adam was immortal just like Henry. Mm-hmm. But even that was hard to watch. It was a little gruesome for me, but probably because I was so invested in her character.
I think that was one of my observations about, I guess, the hurried ending, and maybe it was because it was hurried. Abigail being so staunchly, and perhaps, I don't know how I would imagine myself in that situation, watching myself grow older and watching my husband not grow older alongside me, but for decades and decades, she seemed okay with it, and then just on a dime, snapped. So what possibly precipitated that? And they just didn't do, and perhaps again, because they were rushed, they didn't do a very good job of setting us up for that. Yeah. But I agree with Kristen. I did like the fact that they redeemed her in the end by giving her a purpose and, putting her in the way or in between Adam and Henry. What lingering questions did any of you have at the end of the series? I know we kind of touched on some, but ones that you particularly wish you could have an answer for at this point.
Adam's origin story is a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me. And also, if Adam's theory of the weapon that killed you the first time, if that's the only way that you can truly die, if there's any truth to that, or if that's just a crazy theory that isn't going to work. But since they had both weapons in their possession at the end, it would be interesting to see if either one of them would be brave enough to test that theory.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself, that, even though, his quest was really to find an end to his immortality, if you actually were faced with that possibility in this given moment, and it means I'm not going to live with these people that I love anymore, would you really, yes, I know it's a vicious cycle that you want to end that cycle, but it also means ending what you have right now. Would you really be willing to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I feel like if it did get to that point, Adam would be the one who would be the test subject, obviously. But I don't know if I would have wanted it to work or not. I feel like depending on how the Adam-Henry relationship would have continued to develop, if it would have gotten to that point where Adam had run its course, then I think, yes, the theory would have worked. The dagger would have finally killed Adam once and for all to bring in a new obstacle for the show. But no, maybe that would be Henry's way out of the very closure of the Ultimate series, would be he gets together with Jo, they have a great life together, she gets to old age and passes away, and then Henry follows in her and Abigail's footsteps.
I was also curious as to whether, he really lived 200 years, were there other women that he was with? Would he eventually find out that he actually did father children that he didn't know about?
Very true.
I think my main question is, how did this immortality thing even come to be?
Well,
yeah, that's kind of the big one.
I know.
That's kind of the big overarching one.
Well, so they were let's presume that the common connection is Adam and Henry saving people, saving others when it happened. Was it an act of God? Was it a fluke? Is there something supernatural about the weapons that we keep referring to? What possibly spurred this? And then, why does Henry end up in a body of water? Was it because
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was thinking the same thing.
It's because I feel like Henry was, he was on the ship, he was shot in the chest, and he was in one of the lower decks, so he was technically underwater at the time, inside the ship, and then they threw his body overboard, and so he essentially died in the water. I think he, a combination of drowning and the gunshot to the heart. So I think that's why he manifests in water, and I'm sure the same thing happens with Adam too. Whenever he dies, I think he remanifests in water.
Did we ever see him die?
Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah, I think
what happens to him? Like when he...
I feel like we saw him disappear. We saw him, he uses death as an escape mechanism, essentially, to get out of sticky situations.
But we didn't see what happened after that.
Yeah. I feel like he would, if it happens with Henry, it has to happen with Adam too.
You would think.
Yeah.
I feel like, didn't they make a reference to that? I feel like that was, I'm trying to remember, but I think he manifests himself in water as well, and I can't remember how I came about that information. But I think you're right.
Yeah, either Adam made a reference to Henry, like, oh, but isn't this what you happen? This is what happens to you, and Henry's like, oh, how did you know that? I feel like that's how it may have come up within the context of the show, but I could be wrong.
Amie, do you have any lingering questions?
Well, why and how, how he got this curse is my major one, and that's the number one. I was waiting to get that answered, and it wasn't fully answered for me. So
how would you compare Forever to other shows on television? When I ask you this question, you can liken it to other shows. You can talk about how you like it, how you actually like watching it compared to other shows. Does Forever remind you of anything?
I think I enjoyed it. I liked it. I think part of I kind of addressed a little bit of my thoughts about the show in comparison to other shows, but I think the premise is interesting, but the theme borrows from other really popular shows and brings it all into one, which I actually didn't mind. So like there's his power of figuring things out, kind of like a Sherlock, and then the relationship with the examiner, a relationship with police is kind of like Bones, and you guys were making mention to Castle, which I've never seen. So I think if you like all those kind of shows, you really will enjoy this one because it has another different twist to it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It was a nice way of, some people like medical shows, some people like mysteries, or some people like the forensics and the legal or the legal shows, and this was just kind of a unique way of tying it all together. So no matter which kind of show that you liked, you could probably find something that you like in this show.
Yeah. I definitely thought it was a breath of fresh air, and I think for a lot of the reasons that were already shared. I mean, yes, it was a combination of a lot of other shows that are currently out there, but I feel like it was done in such a good and new way that, again, like Amie, I didn't care that it was reminiscent of other elements. And especially, I mean, I love Castle. I've been watching Castle since the beginning, and the season 8 with new showrunners is nowhere near as good as where it could have been. And I really feel like they made a huge mistake by letting Castle continue on one more season and canceling Forever. I feel like it should have been Castle came to a close at the end of season 7. They could have wrapped it up very neatly and then let Forever take its place in their budget and in their time slot. I feel like it would have done extremely well where Castle currently runs in the ABC schedule. I don't know.
Didn't they run it? Isn't that how they started? Like when Castle was off one week, when they run it in that time slot?
They did.
I think that's how
they were trying to get a lot of the same viewers. And that's why they did like a lot of the promos together. I mean, even like Once Upon a Time fans of the adult Once Upon a Time fans could have easily kind of gotten on the Forever train too. I mean, I watch a ton of ABC. It's probably my top network. So yeah, I feel like there was so much opportunity for viewership growth, and I think it was due to mispromotion. They kind of buried it in their schedule. I don't think they played it up as much as they should have, like they did with a lot of their other pilots and new shows for the past couple of years. It's almost like they wanted it to fail, but even the new shows that have come out to replace it, I'm nowhere near intrigued by. I feel it was a big miss on their part to let it go, because Castle, I think back in the day too, it was kind of on the bubble for a while, for like the first and second season. It took viewers a while to really get into it, because it was different at the time, and it would have been nice to see them give Forever the same treatment and the same opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, ABC had me wrapped up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, because I had Castle and Dancing with the Stars on Monday, and I had Forever on Tuesday, and then, of course, they've got Modern Family and all that on Wednesday.
The comedy block.
I haven't even turned the TV on Tuesday night since they got rid of Forever, so there you go, ABC.
Oh. Well, that's actually a brilliant segue, but before I do, from my own personal perspective, I think you're all right in the sense that it combines a lot of different elements from a lot of different shows. But when I was sitting there watching it, and perhaps it's because I watch so much TV, and it's because I watch certain kinds of TV. First, it reminded me of Bones, because Lucas was there, and they were doing forensic examinations and solving crimes. And I was like, well, this feels very Bones-ish. And plus, there was the whole will they or won't they between Henry and Joe, which is very much like Booth and Brennan. But it also reminded me of Sleepy Hollow, because we have he's immortal in this show. Ichabod Crane in Sleepy Hollow, the television show, falls asleep and wakes up 200 years later, just like the tale. But he's from that same time period. There's a lot of similar references, and I kept thinking this is Sleepy Hollow plus Bones plus something vampire-y, because he's immortal, I guess. I don't know. But
all those things are hot topics, and we're successful shows. So
yeah, exactly.
I still don't see the explanation.
I know. Well, and now, so let's segue. So how do you feel about this cancellation? And please don't hold back. Do you think another network should pick the show up? And what do you think of the #SaveForever trending fan campaign and movement to resurrect the show?
I feel like the Save Forever campaign or movement, if you will, I feel like it's really lost steam. I feel like a lot of shows in recent years that have been canceled, that have been very popular with fans, I feel like they're just not working, or it takes years and it has to have a continued fan base for years. I mean, it's been, 8 years since Gilmore Girls ended, and we're finally getting a limited revival series on Netflix, and the same thing with Full House. I don't think there's a Full House campaign, but that's come on after way longer than 8 years. I don't know, I feel like because it was only one season, I don't think that, obviously ABC is not going to put the time and money into resurrecting it, and I don't know if another network or if a streaming service like Netflix or Hulu would be able to afford the rights to pick it up from ABC, or if they want to.
It's an interesting question. I mean, that's the way people view shows has completely changed in the last few years. I mean, we didn't have Hulu and Netflix 5 or 10 years ago, you know, and so it's completely changing the face of television, really. So, I mean, it's possible. It'll be interesting to see how possible if they can make that happen. I mean,
it'd be nice.
It would be nice, and I completely respect and appreciate the fact that people like us want to try and bring it back, and it would be nice if they actually could succeed. We actually have a little power.
Hashtag save forever.
I'll say, are we going to call this particular podcast hashtag save forever?
It'll probably be attached.
We should.
I was looking at something on my, of course this was I guess you're right, it's recently, maybe it has died off a little bit early on. It was like they're saying,
it's everywhere.
People have gained on, it's doubled in 24 hours, the people joining, so.
Yeah, but I haven't seen anything even from the Forever official Facebook page that ABC runs. I haven't seen anything besides, happy birthday to Ian who played Dr. Henry Morgan, or catch this actor now on this new show, or...
It would be interesting to see if he turns up in something else on ABC soon, and that tends to happen too if a somewhat successful TV show with an actor is on there and it gets canceled, then you tend to see them pop up in
another
else.
series. Yeah,
it's almost like in the old days where you had a contract with them and they have to they're paying you for a year or two or however long the contract is, so we might as well use them somewhere.
Yeah, well, I know after Once Forever was announced that it was canceled, there was a big push by the Once Upon a Time fan community to cast, I'm going to totally butcher his name, Ian, thank you, to have Ian play Merlin, the wizard, on their new Camelot arc, that they thought, hey, he's British, he's got the voice, we could totally buy him as Merlin. So I'm sure he's going to pop up somewhere in the ABC universe, I'm just not sure where.
I hope so. I feel bad for the actor because this is the second series in a row where it's one season and off. Full season and then off. Amie, how do you feel about the cancellation and the movement to save it?
It's disappointing because of the unique twist. The unfortunate thing is, for the reasons that we specified, there are other shows that can satisfy our need for medical examining and forensics and police dramas and mystery and all of that. But the special twist was the whole idea of Henry and Adam and being immortal and how that plays into everyday life. So the unfortunate thing is that I think that these other aspects we can satisfy through other series. So it's going to be really hard, even though I'm pushing for it. I would love to see it come back. It's going to be hard to make a case for it to come back. Who's going to do it? And nobody wants to, if it's a sinking ship, nobody wants to take that on. So, I'm for it, but realistically speaking, it might not be unique enough. And it might not be edgy enough either, because like I said earlier on, I think that there wasn't enough. It was pleasant in a way that I think people are used to, a little more sarcasm and snark and conflict within the department, police department, or within Friends, and there wasn't enough of that, I think, in this series. I'm not complaining, but that's just my observation.
I thought that was refreshing myself.
I did too.
I agree with you, exactly. But I think that we might be a minority in that feeling. That might not be true, but that's just my observation.
Well, didn't they also bring back Laura Mars? Was there a Kickstarter campaign or something?
Oh, Veronica Mars.
Yeah,
and that one, that fan base has been active and, demanding there was, a film or a resurrected TV series. They had always been extremely vocal about it. And that show had been picked up and canceled and moved networks or something.
No, it was on for 3 seasons, but it was on when the CW had just formed.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So, of course, the WB and UPN combined to be the CW, and it actually affected a lot of their shows. It was a tricky time. That was also when Gilmore Girls was in its final seasons. There was a lot of shuffling, and Veronica Mars, again, was another one of those shows that I have not watched it. It's on my very long list of all the shows I want to see. All the things. But it was one of those shows that picked up steam. It had a very cult following to start, and then, again, word of mouth. But CW, at the time, it's still kind of the baby brother network, and it was really the baby brother network at that point. So it wasn't getting a lot of its shows fully fleshed out chances to thrive, I think. That being the prime example.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think at this point, the time for another network to pick it up is probably past. Because when a lot of the networks made their pickups, drops, whatever, for the 15-16 season, the Mindy Project was dropped from Fox, and it was immediately, or relatively immediately, picked up by Hulu because it was, it had been a very strong show up until that point. I'd never watched it. Disclaimer here.
I highly recommend
I just know, I just know the situational information about it, and I feel like the time for forever would have been back in May.
I was secretly hoping that something like Sci-Fi would pick it up, but it all, again, maybe back to Amy's point, it may not have the edge that Sci-Fi is looking for. It's cable, obviously. This is it was a very family-friendly drama. They were looking at some grisly murders, but they didn't really show any of that, and it was very family-centric with the focus on Henry and Abe and Abigail.
Yeah, it's almost like it should have been in that 9 to 10 time slot instead of in the 10 to 11, because like you said, it wasn't very gruesome. I mean, yes, you could see bits and pieces of the examined bodies, but very rarely did you see anything that you wouldn't...
The violence and and the sex and the things that you wouldn't want to watch with kids. Yeah, I think I said that too. It's like, I mean, even... Modern Family at 9 has more sexual references and stuff. It was just something that you could watch as a family.
Yeah, I think it would have been much stronger in the 9 o'clock time slot.
Or maybe perhaps on a different night. They've been toying with the post Once Upon a Time slots for forever.
And I think that would have been a perfect companion with Once Upon a Time, even in the off season when Once is on its mid-season break. Forever still would have been a very strong following. They would have gotten a lot of lead-in viewers from that 8 to 9 slot.
I think there's a lot of crossover fan base there.
Myself included.
I think everyone here.
Indeed, that's true. Given everything that we've talked about, sadly it's canceled. We don't know if it's ever going to be picked up again. We hope, but hope is diminishing. One of the questions that I ask about shows that are canceled or ended is, would you recommend the show to others? Would you buy the series? Would you watch it again without buying it? Would you tell someone, hey, even though this was canceled, it's worth checking out this one and only season? And why or why not?
I definitely would recommend it to others. In fact, I think I did. Buying it, I don't always buy a lot of series. I probably wouldn't buy it for myself unless, maybe a few years down the line I'm feeling nostalgic, then maybe I would. But I would, my dad loves watching movies on DVD. I don't know that he has, like a Hulu or a Netflix to watch, so I would buy it for someone like him, for sure. And I definitely would watch it with him or anyone else who would want to. We obviously have all these questions like, okay, it would be interesting to watch it again and see, was there something I missed that might have explained some of these things, so.
I would definitely recommend, and I think, again, too, I also recommended it to others as well. I don't know if I would buy it on DVD. Also, like Sherryl, I don't normally buy TV sets or, TV series on DVD. I've only bought one, and that was Alias, because that was my first big TV love back in the day. But, I mean, if it were, is it available on Netflix or Hulu? I haven't.
It's not currently available on any of the streaming services.
Well, that is very sad. ABC should make it available on one or the other, because I would definitely rewatch it.
Is it possibly too soon though? Because I know, like, my son was a big Supernatural fan, and we couldn't start watching the next season until another full season had passed.
It's possibly too soon, but the different networks have different.
Yeah.
Well, they would probably still release it in some format, I would think, to cash in on whatever they can cash in on.
Yeah.
It's a little bit troubling to me that it hasn't even been made available on Amazon to purchase or iTunes to purchase, because I did research that before I came to the podcast today. Because it's a canceled series, usually those tend to come out a little bit more quickly, so I'm wondering what the holdup is.
Like maybe if there is some negotiation going on behind the scenes of some sort, or
would they possibly wait till Christmas time comes?
But it seems like now is kind of the
Yeah.
prime. I mean, when we're recording this, is kind of the prime gift giving, launching, or at least getting the teasers out.
Right.
But
I don't know. What do you think, Amie? Would you recommend the show?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just because it's not continuing doesn't mean it's not still intriguing. And why not? If I enjoyed it so much, why wouldn't I want to share that with somebody? The only problem is it's getting somebody really into a show knowing that that's all they're going to get is the one season. But, why not? After I started watching, I stumbled on it. A bunch of people I spoke to said, "Oh my God, absolutely, that's great. I'm surprised you weren't watching it sooner."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just surprised that it's not picked up again with how many people love it. But,
Well, and we could be hopeful and say that maybe the reason why ABC or whoever is in charge of DVD distribution rights or streaming distribution rights, maybe the reason why it hasn't been released is because somebody is trying to ship it to some other place where it can thrive. Because it is also noteworthy that none of the actors in the main cast, as far as I can tell, have been recast or have gone on to other projects.
No.
So I'm wondering if they're all holding on with bated breath and wondering if there is a life that they can, because it's happened before where shows that have been canceled, the one that immediately comes to mind is Family Guy. That's been canceled twice, and yet it continues to survive, whether it should or not.
It should not.
I think they did that with Body of
it makes
They did.
it makes me wonder if we're this invested, how disappointed the actors might be, because we're just getting into the meat of some of their stories and where this is going. So they may be, they're probably just as disappointed for more than just the storylines, obviously. But I mean, they don't have answers, just like we don't have answers.
Right, and I think all of us here have been involved with acting in some way, and as actors, that it takes a while for you to even develop the character anyway, and so they were just getting in, really getting to the meat of who their characters were.
Well, and especially too, since they filmed the pilot so far in advance for the network, so they'll maybe film the pilot in February, and if it gets picked up, then they won't even revisit these characters again until June or July once they get the full season or half season pickup. So things, if they've had time to mull it over, they can completely change the character. Even a few episodes in, it can get more solidified, and different choices can be made.
I actually thought these actors stay pretty consistent, with the possible and notable exception of Elena de la Garza as Jo.
She really evolved, I feel.
She evolved in big leaps.
Yep. They gave her much more of a personality, and they really fleshed out more of her backstory with her losing her husband, and they made some great character development with her as the season progressed.
Yeah, she was very clipped and very abrupt, just very stone-faced.
Closed
off, which could have been, the character choice of we don't know what's going on with her, maybe this is a wall she puts up.
Or maybe this was the original direction that they thought they wanted the character to take, then once they sent it to test audiences, maybe she didn't score as high as in the character department as some of the other ones did, and they took that feedback and made the adjustments what would feel more natural to the viewers who had gotten used to her very closed-off demeanor.
Because it's clear that the actress and Ian Gruffin had some chemistry.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So
the whole cast.
Her character almost had to change somewhat in order to be open to that relationship. So.
Kind of very apropos that Abe owns an antique store.
Yeah,
Henry just hangs on to it for a couple of years, and boom, it's an antique.
I found that endearing.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh,
that was all his personal collection.
It was. And then Jane Seymour as Abe's ex-wife.
Oh,
I completely forgot about that.
Oh, I love that.
That was a good guest casting choice. Just saying. On the scale, they balanced it out quite nice. I thought she could have had some really fun little...
They could have brought her back.
They could have brought her back for some just fun little jaunts.
They were probably intending it. I mean, the implication was that Abe and she have kind of been off and on.
And rekindled and
all of that. Have they ever been in anything together before?
I don't think so. But they had some great, real fun chemistry. That was just a joy to watch. I remember just smiling and laughing along with every little scene that they had.
As did Henry.
Yeah,
Henry was listening.
Well, and the fact that she had never met Henry too, that they kept Henry's secret from Abe's wife or ex-wife. I thought that was an interesting thing that I would like to see a little more of, especially with the younger actors that they had cast to play Abe. The one I forgot, he was in 10 Things I Hate About You and a bunch of other movies.
I know his name too, and now it's
but he was
Crumples.
perfect.
David Crumples.
Yes, he was perfect younger Abe casting.
He looked exactly like him.
Exactly like him. I would have loved to see, because he even had great chemistry with Ian too, and I would have loved to see the two of them have more scenes, in that general age span of Abe's life, like meeting Jane Seymour's character, or whenever they got married. It would have been fun to kind of see their relationship at the beginning, and why did they keep Henry away from even introducing her back then, But
that's an interesting question. How would he be married and never meet your dad?
Yeah.
How
do you explain that?
I loved that guest cast too.
Yeah, that was very smart.
Very on the nose, and he did a great job of sort of mirroring what Judd Hirsch had brought to Abe. There was a real symmetry there. I love that kind of continuity thing when actors confer and watch and mirror each other's mannerisms.
Even hair and makeup, they helped keep it. Where even if you just kind of jumped in after a commercial break, okay, that's younger Abe. You didn't have to think about it. It was very natural casting.
The only
choice.
thing that was even remotely different was his accent.
Just a little.
And just a hint. Yep. But I guess that evolves over time too.
It does. So.
Oh yeah.
It was totally beautiful.
They weren't always in New York City, were they?
Most of the time, I think maybe different parts of New York City. Okay. The apartment may have changed if they've had to move based on people discovering Henry's identity or not. But as you get older, your accent can change, and maybe Abe wanted to sound a little more refined in the antique business.
Oh, there is that.
I thought it was the other way around.
I don't remember.
The younger man had less of a New York accent. Had more of one, but
I don't remember. But brilliant casting choices that weren't overly advertised, like Cuba Gooding Jr. for a month. So
right at first when they said Jane Seymour was going to be on, in my head I'm going, Jane Seymour and Judd. I wouldn't have thought of putting those two together.
But it was
genius.
It was genius. Props to their casting directors, because they made some fantastic choices.
And to their episode directors.
Yes.
Because I think there was some very consistent, very well done direction that it created a very consistent tone, a very consistent pace, and I think they were able to elicit these little moments between these characters.
Yeah, and even a very nerdy thing, the cinematography was really well done too. They had some beautiful shots of New York, but even the way they shot Henry being reborn out of the water was really interesting. But again, like you said, it was kept very consistent, and I don't know, there was just some great camera work.
I agree. I also love the interior and exterior face of the antique shop.
Yes,
it was always really fun to just zoom in on that,
and it was such a nice contrast from their competing antique dealer antique environment. Her shop was it was very cold and very
austere.
Yes, and Abe's was just welcoming and friendly. It was like walking into your grandmother's basement and finding everything that she had stashed away. And I liked that contrast. That was pretty nifty.
It was. There was a lot of, I agree, very visually engaging pieces to this show, and more so, I think, than many other television shows, without the visual effects aspect. It was very natural shooting. It was very,
Yeah, and same thing with the Amie's office, too. In a lot of other, cop dramas and crime shows, it's a very dark, dank place. Even in Castle Laney's, Amie area, it's in the basement, and it's dark, and, their office was light and bright, and there were windows, and Henry had this beautiful interior office with this beautiful desk. It was such a breath of fresh air to see how different the set designers created their environment versus the other shows that are around now or have been around in recent history. The whole visual aspect set it apart.
Would have been fun to work on it.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Well, with that said, I think we have fully fleshed out our discussion of the one and only season of Forever. We're all very, very sad by the fact that it was canceled. And all very sternly looking, although you can't see it, at ABC Network executives for canceling this show. Do you not know how ratings works? They were climbing, I say. And I have to agree with Kristen that, well, I mean, I haven't watched them all in depth, but so far, some of the replacements for the show or around the show have not been as enticing. So says the moderator. But we'll get to that maybe in other blog posts and podcasts. What I'd like to do, however, right now is thank Amie, Kristen, and Sherryl for being part of Couch Potatoes Unites Forever podcast. Please stay tuned. Keep checking out the blog. Keep checking out iTunes. Keep checking out YouTube. Find us on Facebook and Twitter. Keep watching your TVs and let us know what you think, not only of what you're watching on TV, but what you're hearing from us. We love feedback, and we would love any suggestion or encouragement that you might have. But for now, this is Kylie, your moderator, saying thanks for listening. Keep watching, keep tuning in. Bye-bye.